With local friend Chris Labarge here. He's a good neighbor of mine. We've known each other for a lot of years now, and luckily with Chris, he purchased his first property up the road from my place, and we're now doing what's called a cooperative. A cooperative is when two like-minded landowners come together, manage property specifically for wildlife. And Chris and I, like I say, we've known each other for a long time, going on like 15 years, I guess now.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And today we're going to talk about food plots, a little bit about how to prepare them, and the basics of getting started, because Chris is on a new property now. He has a few questions I thought we'd be able to share with the guests.
Welcome to another great season of the Homegrown Hunter.
Watch your way. Sure.
Good girl.
Homegrown Hunter TV is brought to you by Rack Stacker, Canada's leader in big game attractants. Campbellford Chrysler, a small town dealer with a huge inventory. Huckabones Equipment, Ottawa Valley's Kubota dealer. Bishop Lake Outdoors, First Place Trailers, L10 Outdoor Solutions, Badlands Packs and Apparel, the original portable winch, Nature of Design signs and graphics, and these other fine sponsors.
Does property size matter for when it comes to food plotting?
Don't ever underestimate the size of the property that you have and what kind of food plot you may need. Of course, larger property, the easier to manage, but it also becomes more work, and you need more equipment and more time and so on. So
With starting food plot, what do you recommend? How do you begin?
what I'm going to do today is do what's called frost seeding. It's March 10th. It's early in the year. It's still not time to break some soil yet, but what I can do is take a little garden seeder like this, fill it full of walk and toss, and literally walk and toss it. What I'm doing is spreading light amounts of seed onto the ground, so as the ground freezes and thaws, the expansion of the soil is going to take that seed in. Now, once the temperatures hit 60 degrees later in April, all those sprouts will take off. Now, this has got 50% clover in it, so you're going to have lush green clover. As you can tell, I've been using this as a four-wheeler trail and a trail for my truck. So I've been driving up and down this. This is the perfect area for this. It works perfect for using this as walk and toss. The farmer's not going to get upset for doing this. And you can take this small 10-foot section and turn it into a clover patch. I always look up. If the open canopy is anywhere between 40 to 60 feet wide from east to west, for every 10 foot of open canopy, you're going to get about an hour's worth of sunlight on the ground. So if you go to a spot, let's say runs east to west, you're way better off planting that location, because obviously the sun comes up in the east, drops in the west.
Okay, now I've reading online and all your different things. I hear a lot of guys talking about the pH level. How important is the pH level?
If you're going to be planting in an area that's got a lot of evergreen trees around, the evergreens, the needles themselves, the cedar trees or whichever you're planting around, can be very acidic. So as soon as I see that, I instantly think I got to apply lime. So because your pH levels are lower, your plants can't utilize as much. So let's say there's 100 pounds of food for the plant. If it's a 4.5 pH level, there's a higher chance that the nutrient value in the soils can't be absorbed by the plant. Therefore, can't grow, can't feed the deer, and so on. So it's very important to neutralize your pH levels so that all the nutrients goes to the plant. The plant grows very lush and very green, and then your deer are going to come to that area more readily. So the pH levels are extremely important. There's a couple different sources of lime. There's pelletized lime, which I like to use because it's easier to handle. And there's also crushed limestone, which is very cheap. You can get it from a local aggregate.
Okay.
But you apply the lime, and what that does over time is slowly changes the pH levels. Doesn't mean you can't plant. It just means your plants can't grow as good as some other places.
Full potential.
Exactly. So in order to get full potential of your plants, apply lime if you need it. There are some very lush, rich soils in Ontario, and there's other places like mine that's flat rock and sandy. So you have to basically play it that way. But do the soil test, go to your local feed store, co-op, and then that way you can get your soil test done from them and find out what your pH levels are. First of all, these rusty old shovels, get rid of them. They're not going to do you any good except for compromise the actual test. Go to your local kitchen. What you want to do is take a normal clean spoon and clear away the top debris. When you take that top debris, get down about 2.5 inches and throw some soil in a Ziploc bag. Do this to 5 or 6 different locations across your plot, depending on how big it's going to be. Mix it up in the bag. When you get your test, go back home, leave the bag open and don't leave it on the dash of your truck. If you leave it on the dash of your truck, that's going to end up compromising it as well. So try to keep it out of the sunlight and keep the top of the Ziploc open. Pour it out on a piece of paper when you get home and let it dry out. Give it 2 or 3 days, put back in a Ziploc bag. Again, go to rackstacker.ca. It gives you a full set of instructions on how to do this, and you can find out the information on where to send it. Well, the first thing that some guys are thinking too, like your equipment is a huge importance when it comes to food plotting, and it's not. I mean, my first food plot I installed was with a bed spring and cinder blocks. You know, like you bungee strap them on and try and break the ground. Doesn't matter if it's the size of your living room or if it's a 2-acre field. It all depends on the equipment you have available to you. You know, I've got a couple pieces of small equipment. You bought one this year for yourself. They pull behind a quad, very simple to use. But when it comes to food plot size, that's really up to what you can do or what the time you have.
Closed captioning has been brought to you by the original portable winch. Compact, lightweight, and can be carried anywhere. This week's Tech Tip is brought to you by Hookabones Equipment, Ottawa Valley's Kubota dealer.
When transporting the Groundhog Max, you can pull it out of your reese, flip it upside down, travel to your next food plot. When you get there, put down your 6x6 blocks underneath your tire. I've got it cut at about a 30-degree angle. You back your side-by-side up, attach it. Once you're attached, lock your pins. When you pull off of this, it actually pushes the Groundhog Max down into the ground using the weight of the machine to work your food plot. Welcome back to the show, folks. We're talking food plots here with a local friend of mine, Chris Labarge, and he had a couple questions in regards to management for white-tailed deer, and food plots are the #1 thing.
As you know, young family, don't have a lot of time. What can I put down that's going to last a couple years for me that I'm hopefully not going to have to go back and do a whole lot of maintenance with, just so I can focus on other things for my whitetail management?
Well, we have a product called Superbuck, and Superbuck is a perennial-based forage, and you can plant that, but it does take some time to prepare it. Just like any other type of food plot, you want to make sure you stage this out right. You can't just go in there on a weekend and work it all up and disc it all up and seed it all down and expect for miracles to happen. It doesn't work that way. Biggest thing I would do is go on to rackstacker.ca. You can read up a lot of information in regards to Superbuck, but that's a perennial-based forage that will come back year after year. When you're preparing a spot like that, what I normally do is I prepare it the year before. Spray it in October around Thanksgiving weekend. Even earlier is okay, September. The reason for that is when you spray, carbohydrates in the plant are going to the root system. What's happening is it kills the plant more readily. So then the following spring, all it's going to be is a muddy field. Everything's going to be dead. That's when you can go in there, cultivate it, drag it, seed it, pack it all in May. Or you can even do it as early as April, but depends on when your frost level's gone. So once the frost is gone, go in there, start working the spot up, seed it, pack it. We do what's called nurse cropping with our forages. Annuals will grow up very quickly and protect the perennials underneath more or less from the sun, from drought. It keeps the rain and the moisture and the humidity in the ground to allow those perennials to develop a strong root system. So once they develop that strong root system and the annuals die off or the deer eat them that following fall, you'll have a perennial-based forage that's available for 4 or 5 years.
Finished a food plot, got it all dissed out, and I threw my seed down. Packing, is that a must? What do I got to do? Should I do it?
So after all the time you've put into it, it's almost like insurance when you're food plotting. If you pack it, all you're doing is trying to press the air pockets out of the soil. Because every time you aerate the ground, you're loosening everything up. When you seed it down, there's a couple different things that can happen. One, the moisture in the ground will allow that root to actually grow. When it starts to grow, if it doesn't have a good, firm, packed soil, it'll dry out. The sun will dry the root out on it. Another thing it will do is also make sure that when you press it down into the ground, it makes it harder for the birds or anything around to eat up your seed. It's happened lots before where guys will broadcast seed. Of course, you can walk down into any type of broken soils and see lots of little blackbirds or chickadees and doves and stuff like that. They're out there eating your seed. So when you pack it and press the seed down, you're ensuring good seed to soil contact to ensure that it roots really well, the birds aren't going to get into it before it takes off, and it's also like insurance. You know, making sure that you got that down is very, very important. Whether you use the tires of your quad, we did that the other day where we were using our quad tires to pack it down in a small food plot, or you can use a big roller. I just purchased what's called a culti-packer. It's got little divots in the wheels that roll, and it packs it down really well and retains the moisture in the ground. So it is very, very important to pack every time you food plot. You know, maintenance is also very important when you're talking about perennial-based forages, because if you're going to take the time to put down a food plot that, you know, lasts 4 to 5 years, you also have to plan ahead to know that you're going to need to maintain that. Let's say it's a half-acre food plot of superbuck. Superbuck is really good throughout the year because it grows super early in the springtime. As soon as you get the sun out in April, it'll start to come out and you'll see the leaf out. That's what the deer are into, especially younger fawns and stuff need to get in that early to put the weight on before the coyotes get at them, right? So perennial-based forages are really, really good for that. You always want to make sure that it's lush in growth. So when you cut the plants down, it looks like crap, always does. And you're like, what am I doing? You know, I had this beautiful food plot that was 1.5 feet high. Well, mow it down to 6 or 8 inches every 6 to 8 weeks. The reason being is that when you mow that down, you're stimulating the plant, you're adding organic material back down to the ground to improve the soils that are there. And then when you stimulate the plant, the top 1/3 of the plant holds the most nutrient value. So it's going to allow more animals to come in, more attractiveness. A really important thing too with mowing is that it knocks all your weeds down. So it allows your perennials to stay there stronger. A lot of guys want to put it down and walk away. Well, that's not how it works. You got to maintain that. Being in southern Ontario, the last week I mow with my bush hog is Labor Day weekend, September. So when you bush hog Labor Day weekend, there's still 3 to 4 weeks of growing time. There's enough heat in the air and the temperatures are above 60, so it allows those plants to come up just before the bow season.
All right, Steve, so I've got a 2-acre plot in the middle of my property. What, should I plant it all as one, or should I do a couple of different things?
Put a bit of a plan together in regards to what time of year you want those deer to be there and what your goals are at the end of the year. So I try and hold deer at my place as late as possible, and I try and provide as much food for the late season as I can. For someone like yourself that's trying to grow a 2-acre plot, what I would do is break that up. If you were to do 1 acre in superbuck, the other half of the plot can be mixed and matched depending on what your goals are. I would do a 1/2 acre plot of beans. Reason being is that, get it, reason being? That's a knee slapper.
Getting knee slapped, you got the microphone.
Reason being.
And now, this week's Cut to the Chase segment, brought to you by Rackstacker.
I'm Peter from Rackstacker. The gobblers were gobbling today, so I thought I'd come and check out this hill. We had some erosion problems last year when we put down the walk and toss, and it just got washed away. So we have last year's upland game. We're going to spread it around. We're going to do some raking and just spread the walk and toss around. Put the thatch over top. It's going to keep it moist. It's going to keep the birds off. And if we do get some more heavy rains, it'll help protect the seed from washing away. And then we'll come back in the fall with a bush hog and see how it's holding up.
The reason being is that if you were to plant a 1/2 acre of soybeans, the protein levels obviously go directly to the antlers during the growing season. It provides food above the snow line in December. And then the other half of the plot, so now we're down to 1.5 acres with beans and superbuck. Go the other half, plant it in field edge and Biggins radish. And you plant that August long weekend. So superbuck in May or June, early part of June. You can plant your beans in May or June, same with superbuck. and then leave your other half of the plot specifically for field edge. The field edge is a big broadleaf plant. When the frost hits it, the composition of the plant changes from starches to sugars, and that's when the deer really hammer it. The important part of Biggin's radish is deer love the top growth of that plant. What happens is the plant breaks down, and because it's got a very, very deep taproot, it's actually got about a 12-foot taproot on it, draws all the nutrients back up to the soils. So you're actually improving your ground for the following year's planting. So break up your plot based on what your management goals are. I plant 5 to 6 acres at my properties that I have in order to hold them throughout the winter months so that my fawns hit the ground as healthy as possible. If you were to take 10 seeds and put it on a piece of paper and get it wet, within 5 to 7 days, there's a good chance that 10 of those seeds are going to germinate because the germination rate is very high on our seeds. That's what allows me to be confident when I'm selling the product to the customers, that they can plant it and be confident to know that it's going to do well. Another good thing to know too when you're food plotting, providing food to not only the food plot is very important with fertilizer, but the fertilizer also goes right to the animal that you're feeding. You know, a lot of guys will skip that part of the course too, where tens of thousands of pounds of food available for your deer herd specifically on that food source. So if you're going to go through the steps of putting in a food plot, ensure that you've got $50 to $60 set aside per acre to put some fertilizer down in order to get those plants to be lush and green.
Now, when's the best time to fertilize?
Some guys like to fertilize right when they seed. I don't personally like to do that. Some people think that it's going to burn it off. I don't think it's going to burn it off, but what happens is as it rains, it's going to leach into the ground. It could potentially get below the root level. So what I like to do is plant your seed. 3 to 4 weeks later, when the seed is up about 2 to 3 inches, that's when I go in with my fertilizer. Then that way, as soon as it starts to hit the ground, the plant's able to take that fertilizer in right away, and boom, away she goes. One very important thing when you're broadcasting, inside the actual seeder itself, it's called a seed gate. So the gate opens and closes. You don't want a lot of seed on your food plot. So what I normally do is I'll open up the seed gate just a little bit, and then I'll put a pinch of seed down in there to see how far it falls. As soon as it starts to fall through the seed gate, that's as much as you want. Because plots like field edge need a lot of room to grow. Because if you put too many seeds on one spot, you're going to choke out your plants. Therefore, they're not going to be 2.5 feet high like mine do. Field edge is the biggest product that we sell in the fall for food plotters, and the biggest mistake that they make is overseeding it and not giving enough room to grow.
Less is more.
Less is better growth, yep, absolutely. Quite often the biggest mistake with any type of food plotting is overseeding. You really don't want to overseed your plots at all, especially our products called Biggin's Radish and Field Edge, because those plants need to get very big. And in order to get very big, they're also competing with the nutrient value and the sunlight that's available. So the more seed you put down, the more they're going to compete with each other. If the brassica that's in Field Edge or the Biggin's Radish has to get 3 feet high and 2 feet wide, if it doesn't have at least a foot by a foot square on the ground to grow, it's not going to get that big. Make sure that you broadcast your seed very thin so it allows enough room for them to grow so they're not competing with each other throughout the growing season, and you'll be successful in the field. I want to show you a quick product that's called CWTF Turkey Blend. Now most people would look at this and think that it's nothing but grass growing up here, but in fact this spot actually looks fantastic. It grows up to 7 feet high, produces a lot of seed for those turkeys, buckwheat, and milos, and millets, and taller growing forages, but you gotta plant them in the early parts of May so you get lots of growth. The different stages of height for this product actually allows the snow to not only allow the turkeys to get up on it, but it's above the snow line during the winter months when those turkeys really need it the most. Another thing you need to be aware of is that with the CWTF Turkey Blend, the Canadian Wild Turkey Federation gets a portion of every sale to help with their efforts. We're now going to join Chris at his property where he's going to be planting a super buck pocket in the back end of his property to hopefully draw those deer in. The nice thing about planting a small pocket like this is the deer feel very comfortable coming out into the open. They also frequently visit a spot like this because they know that the food source has been there throughout the summer months. It's something to give some good thought to because it could work out really well in the long run, especially when you get into late season during the rut.
Bear's down right there. We're gonna get down to the stand and have a look at him. I'm all jacked up right now. I think I know what deer that is, but I'm not gonna say for sure until I get my hands on him.
Fortunately, this morning, 8 o'clock, this big lad was able to walk out, and we give him a shot with the muzzle loader here. We can't thank Steve over at Rack Stacker enough. He's been standing behind us for quite a long time, and another mature buck hits the ground here on our home farm that we have, and I know for a fact it's not going to be the last one, that's for sure. The products just prove themselves again and again. Whether it's the feed, their food plots, their minerals, all their attractants, having the best products in Canada for these big whitetails. So here's the proof.
For past episodes, be sure to check out hghtv.ca. Until next time.